As many of you know, those of us who worship here at Messiah have been working very hard over the past several months as we have wrestled with tough questions and difficult passages of Scripture. Many of our brains have been working overtime, even since General Conference in February, as we have wrestled with human sexuality in Scripture and worked on reconciling how so many faithful Christians can reach very different conclusions on what Scripture says. The August sermon series focused on how to read the Bible and how it's very hard to read it objectively. We have learned that 10 of us may read the same Scripture passage, and because we all have different life experiences and biases, we each bring something different to the text. We each interpret it slightly different at first. We have learned that when reading the Bible, we must examine the context of the text. We have explored nuances in words, the way they were originally written to mean, compared to how we interpret them today. We have learned that some of what we think comes from the Bible actually comes from pop culture or historical circumstances or even cultural sayings. We've been practicing our biblical interpretation skills. But someone asked me recently, is asking questions sinful? Well, since I define sin as anything that separates us from God, my answer was something like, well, no, questions are not sinful, and even doubt is not sinful, as long as we remember to bring our questions and our doubt to God and engage with God in our wrestling, rather than allowing it to drive a wedge between us. In fact, asking questions and wrestling with difficult subjects will deepen our faith and ultimately draw us closer to God. And not being allowed to ask questions might even drive some of us away. But I continued to think about that question, the question about questions and sin. And I wondered if others may be asking the same thing, even if not out loud. And I wondered if some of us may be feeling a little overwhelmed or even battered from all this thinking. Maybe even the idea that we can interrogate Scripture in this way feels really weird to you. Maybe you grew up in a faith tradition that didn't allow questions. Or maybe you really have gotten stuck in all the questions, because have you noticed that questions often lead to more questions? And maybe your questions have distanced you from God. So what I was thinking is that our brains need a rest, and we are due for a jelly donut sermon, as Reggie might say. Maybe jelly donut sermons are sometimes necessary. Sometimes we do need a reminder of what we know to be true, without question, and that is Jesus. This morning we will rest in who Jesus is and what he brings to our lives. So sit back and get comfortable and imagine a jelly donut on your lap and a mug of warm coffee in hand. Today we're going to explore a story in Scripture that will remind us of who Jesus is and how much he cares for us. The story that we read is found in the Gospel of John, and it is an account of Jesus healing the royal official's son. I'm going to read the Scripture again a second time, but this time I invite you to close your eyes, not quite yet, as you listen and use all of your senses as you encounter Jesus. So for example, what does the air smell like? What sounds do you hear in the background? Do you hear sounds of chatter? Do you hear footsteps? Or was it quiet as people watched to see what would happen? How do you feel as you watch this exchange between Jesus and the royal official? Do you feel compassion for the royal official? Or do you feel annoyed, like he might be pestering Jesus? What does the setting look like? Are Jesus and the royal official tired? Are they excited? Are they smiling? Are they tense? What are they wearing? What are the tones of their voices? Who else was there? Open up your senses and exercise your imagination muscles as I read. So now, if you would please close your eyes and hear again the gospel of Jesus Christ according to John. Then he came again to Cana in Galilee, where he had changed the water into wine. Now there was a royal official whose son lay ill in Capernaum. When he heard that Jesus had come from Judea to Galilee, he went and begged him to come down and heal his son, for he was at the point of death. Then Jesus said to him, "Unless you see signs and wonders, you will not believe." The official said to him, "Sir, come down before my little boy dies." Jesus said to him, "Go, your son will live." The man believed the word that Jesus spoke to him and started on his way. As he was going down, his slaves met him and told him that his child was alive. So he asked them the hour when he began to recover, and they said to him, "Yesterday at 1 p.m, the fever left him." The father realized that this was the hour when Jesus had said to him, "Your son will live." So he himself believed, along with his whole household. Now this was a second sign that Jesus did after coming from Judea to Galilee. So you can open your eyes. I'm very curious what did come to your mind, so I hope that you'll tell me later. But I want to tell you what came to my mind while reading this passage. I imagined that Jesus was tired and worn out from his travels. I imagined that Jesus was sitting in town, resting, when approached by this royal official. I imagined that the royal official was important and wealthy. Did the royal official feel embarrassed to approach a simple carpenter in the middle of town to beg for healing? Or did his desperation override his pride? To me, it seems the royal official seemed to approach Jesus humbly, indicating he knew that Jesus was more than a carpenter. He already believed. When Jesus responded to the royal official, I imagined he shook his head quietly, remarking, "Unless you see signs and wonders, you will not believe." I wondered why Jesus said that. The royal official traveled 20 miles to get to Jesus. He must have known that Jesus had the power to heal his son. The man had not expressed any doubt thus far. Whether Jesus' rebuke was directed to the royal official, or maybe to the crowd that may have gathered to witness this unlikely exchange, the royal official was not discouraged. He persisted and again pleaded for Jesus to heal his son. This man believed. He wasn't asking Jesus to prove himself. He was begging Jesus to save the life of his son, and Jesus did. Just like the royal official, most of us here have faith and believe, but even still, no one is immune from doubt. And even though we have faith, sometimes in our seasons of doubt or seasons of many questions, we long to know that Jesus is still involved in our life. We want to know that he still cares. So it's true. We do hope for signs and wonders. According to this story, Jesus knows that about us. It surprised me that Jesus healed a royal official's son, a man who probably had everything he would have ever wanted or needed, because I normally think of Jesus caring for the marginalized and the oppressed. It surprised me, but it also comforted me, because most of us are that royal official. Most of us have everything we need and most of what we want. But Jesus responded to this man anyway. The royal official was humble, desperate, and persistent, and Jesus responded to his need and desperation. The other thing that impressed me was the faith of this royal official. I'm certain he had hoped that Jesus would have traveled back with him to heal his son in person. But instead, Jesus simply said to the man, "Go, your son will live." Imagine being that royal official. How would you have responded? Would you have been speechless? Or maybe you would have said, "Okay, thank you." Or, "Aren't you going to come with me?" Or maybe, "Really? Are you sure?" He then had to turn around and begin his 20-mile walk or maybe horseback ride back to his home to see if his son was still alive. I'm sure the crowd watched his back as he left. Did they snicker? I'm not sure. But this man had to turn around in faith, trusting Jesus, before actually seeing it with his own eyes. And that's hard to do, to take a step before knowing what will be next. Praying for something and not receiving all the direction we had hoped for is hard. We know how the story ends. Jesus really did heal the royal official's son, and Scripture tells us the man and his whole family believed. His desperation and sense of need turned into a sense of overwhelming love for Christ. And that should be the story of every Christian life, the story of all of our lives. But when we lose our sense of desperation and need, we can easily lose that overwhelming love for Christ. When we do not set aside our egos or our pride, we are unable to approach Jesus humbly. When we try to do it all ourselves, we do not ask for anything at all, much less signs and wonders. We cannot base our faith solely on what Jesus does for us in our lives, but we can see Jesus' glory in what he does. Through the signs and wonders that still occur today, we are reminded of who Jesus is and who Jesus points to, God. Signs and wonders remind us that God is present and still involved in our world today. God cares enough about us humans to be involved in our everyday lives. When you get stuck in a season of doubt, because it happens to all of us, focus on what you know to be true. The Message translation of John 3:16 says, "This is how much God loved the world. He gave his son, his one and only son, and this is why, so that no one need be destroyed. By believing in him, anyone can have a whole and lasting life." So if the story of our Christian life is our overwhelming love for Christ, then we must know who Christ was and who he is. How can we follow him if we don't really know him? How can we be overwhelmed with love for him if we haven't given him the opportunity to take care of us, or if we haven't pushed aside our own pride to receive from him? We must make time and take time to get to know him and invest in the relationship. Philippians 4:8 says, "Finally, beloved, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is pleasing, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, and if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things." So, did you know you're going to have homework today? And you should jot this down. Your assignment comes straight from that verse I just read, Philippians 4:8. Your homework is to focus on Jesus. So this afternoon, find a comfortable place to sit or take a stroll. And while you're sitting or walking, reflect on today's scripture passage and what you learned about Jesus from this account of his life. We learned that he cares not only about the marginalized and oppressed, but he cares about the powerful and the wealthy. He cares about all people, all of creation. We learned that he is willing to give us signs and wonders to remind us of who he is. In fact, we see that happening throughout the Bible. Ask yourself, where is my desperate need? It can be the smallest thing, like a headache. Or it can be something huge, something you might even think too big for God to handle. Your need might be for yourself, your family, your neighborhood, even the world. Where do you need to see God's involvement? While you're reflecting, pray for that one thing. Pray humbly, boldly, persistently, faithfully, and desperately, just like the royal official. God may not respond exactly the way we hope for or even ask for, and sometimes that can be really, really hard, especially when we have to grieve a major loss and wonder why God didn't respond to our prayer. That's one of those things that is hard to make sense of. But God will respond, and God will show himself to you in some way. But are you looking? God will remind you that he is involved in your life and cares about you, but are you noticing? God will remind you of who he is, so watch for it and notice it. The signs and wonders of God are everywhere, all around us, all the time. We just need to practice noticing. Amen.